Welcome to Backstage with Kennedy. This little show will be your remedy. From Toronto, spanning across the sea. Cool people, lots of laughs. This is your favorite podcast.
Hello and welcome. My name's Kennedy from the Backstage with Kennedy podcast. I got a super cool guest today. Really great background. Has been in some amazing punk bands. Currently is in a very good punk band as well. And I'm just amped to have him on the podcast today. So I got Scott from the band Pulley. If you haven't heard of them, check them out. But you should know of them because they are legends in their own right. How you doing today, Scott? What's up, man?
Hey, Kennedy. How you doing? I'm doing great.
Thanks
for having me.
That's what I like to hear. Anytime, man. Anytime. So you got a new project coming out. We'll jump right to it right away. You got a new project coming out. It's like a greatest hits project, and it's acoustic. What can people expect from that? Obviously, it's a little different from everything you guys have done prior. So what can people expect?
Well, it's really just kind of like a few songs. I think it's four. Well, it is four songs. It just kind of came about early on in the whole pandemic thing and having extra time. Guys were out of work, and we started writing for a new record at the time. And so we were writing new music, and we were, going to the studio. We'd have downtime where we'd be fucking around and just playing, on the acoustic guitars, and we started playing some of the older songs and remembering back to like almost around 2000. We had this idea. We wanted to like re-record some songs we had done, original songs on some releases and do them acoustically. And I think it was like our fifth record on Epitaph. We had this in mind going into the studio, and things don't really ever go smooth when you go in the studio. So time is usually, it's like a crunch, and we never really got around to doing it. And for some odd reason, when we finally, after all these years, we started screwing around and they were like, well, this is pretty cool. I said, and I said to them, hey, can you record something for me so I can, practice singing it at home? And just, we all have like little home studios and just kind of stay in shape. And they're like, yeah. So it kind of turned out cool for everybody. And they did their acoustic versions. And then I had something to sing on, and it was cool. And we posted them on YouTube, and we had this thought in mind. We were going to do a little series, like a few songs from each record. And we posted them on YouTube, and we got hit up by this record label, a guy in Europe. And he said, hey, would you be interested in putting them out? And we were like, really? And we thought, well, that's kind of different. And that's kind of really how it came about. That's kind of like really a longer story of your question, but yeah, it just kind of came about. I don't want to say by accident, but just kind of by like more like fun. And I don't know, I kind of enjoyed it. It was different. It was challenging, and it was a different take on songs we'd already recorded, and we've been playing live forever. So it was fun to do something.
They're super wicked tracks. Like I like the originals, but like I love the acoustic as well, man. Like I'm trying to, so I'm thinking like a lot of bands have been doing this, like where they're taking their old material and they are like turning it into acoustic. And it's a lot of bands from like that 90s era that were like absolutely clobbering it back then. So why do you think that is, that everybody's kind of going that way? Like, is it something that as you get older, you're like, you know what, I could tone it down to a little bit of acoustic and I could dig that? Or like, what do you think the reasoning behind that is?
Well, like I was saying earlier, for me personally, it was a lot of songs originally written acoustically anyway.
Okay.
Someone jamming at home, writing a riff on their acoustic guitar, and then you bring it to band practice and everybody's, plugged in. So it turns into a regular song. But for me personally, like I said, it dates back, 20 plus years of kind of really wanting to do this. And I don't know if that's just being a byproduct of the era I grew up in my life of, being a little kid and remembering, the songs on the radio, a lot of acoustic folk kind of rock and shit like that. And so part of me's kind of bummed that we're doing it now, and it's kind of been done and been saturated. And I feel like, well, here we are once again, jumping on the bandwagon, doing something that's already been done, because you always want to kind of be at the forefront of creativity. And I can't really speak for other people and other bands and why they do it. I think a lot of it is, more of like a lead singer who might play guitar and he kind of plays his band songs live.
Yeah.
But I just think after years and years and years and years and years of playing live music, at a high volume, it's just refreshing. It's something different, and it challenges you in a way where, you have to be different and you have to think about the song differently. And although the structure stays the same and the melodies stay the same, it's a different style. I mean, I belt out our songs at a fast pace and I'm barely catching my breath in between. And with these songs, it took me a little while to go, fuck, man, I got to really sing. And like, I don't know if I can do this, and hold out a note and stretch it out and things that I'm not accustomed to doing. But once I started doing it, it was like I said, the challenge became fun. But, if I had to speak for everybody, I guess I would just say, the fact of having something different and giving you a different spin or a different take on songs that you're used to hearing, maybe in a different light. And I guess as we do get older and maybe things mellow out a little bit, I don't know. I couldn't imagine taking it on the road, but it was fun to do for, in the studio.
Absolutely. I have a buddy who's in a Toronto like ska band called the Filthy Radicals, and they're pretty upbeat generally, and there's a lot more screaming than singing. But they're freaking awesome. I love them. We did like an acoustic roundtable once, and Kyle, the lead singer, that was what he said is, I've never really done acoustic sets, but once I actually started to do it, he's like, it was different. It was refreshing, and he enjoyed it as well. So, I mean, that probably speaks to that, just doing something a little different, but still using that same base off of what you've been doing for years, right?
Yeah, it's fun to put a different spin on a song acoustically. It's just got a different vibe. So it makes it fun. And being your own song, it's even cooler because, like I said, we play a lot of those songs live for 20 plus years, 25 years, and to do it acoustically, it's like, wow, hey, this is cool. It kind of revives the song for me. It gets me reinterested again.
Yeah. Do you get a nostalgic aspect when you listen to some of the earlier Pulley songs? Do you get like a nostalgia, like, oh man, I remember when we played this here and I love that.
Yeah, I don't listen to the songs a whole lot. Sometimes I get that way when I see some things on YouTube, like some video clips that might be from some people's phones, from a show at a certain place. And then my mind instantly goes back to like, man, the backstage and what kind of beer we had and, the whole deal. And it's cool to remember that stuff, and I do have a pretty good memory when it comes to things. So, I'm not one of those guys that's like, well, I think it was like this. I kind of remember. I can remember usually the set we played and how the crowd reacted and whatnot. So it's cool, like when you get the audio and the visual.
Yeah, for sure. So Scott, I like to ask this question because venues are really struggling these days, and I think it's good to talk about shows or venues that really hold true to your heart. And give them a little shout out. Is there a venue that maybe you came up on or that you like to visit from time to time? And do you have a story about that venue? Maybe something funny that happened, something memorable, something along those lines?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say it's an impossible question, but there's just, we're not a band that's been very fortunate to play
absolutely
bigger type halls. So my whole livelihood and all my memories come from, 500 type capacity clubs for the most part, and, shitty little backstages and sweaty venues. And
that's the best though.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. It's like, I love them all. So to pick one, it's tough, the ones that kind of really are memorable, the ones that kind of have sustained through the years. Now it's yet to be seen who can, sustain this most recent struggle, but, an actual venue, for years, you could think about going into, somewhere in Dallas, Texas and playing a club called Emos, or, for example, in Toronto, even on a bigger scale, like you're going to the Opera House, or something to that effect. And there's a club here locally in Long Beach, been going on for close to 20 years, called Alex's Bar. It's the venues that kind of survive a little bit long, because it's really hard, I think, to manage and run and sustain a club at that level with just all the bullshit that goes on,
Oh yeah.
And so to see the clubs that survive, and they either have a really good scene around them, there's really good local bands, really, a good local crew of people that are interested in going to live music, or you're doing something right, or a combination of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the ones that like really stick out to me, are the ones that, like, well, we're going here, and you already know where you're going to play, because it's been there every time you've ever gone. It's the same place. And that's kind of cool, like those type of places. And if I had to name one, I really probably couldn't. It's just that particular in general.
I dig that. Well, you named a couple, so I can appreciate that. And hopefully all those venues are holding up throughout this pandemic, because as I said, it's super tough right now throughout this period, right?
Yeah.
So Scott, there's something that a lot of people may not know about you. You have done so much different things, not just in music, but just in life in general. And one thing that really stuck out to me, I talked to Dennis from 10 Foot Pole a while back on the podcast, and he did bring up the fact that you went to go play for the Dodgers. Not many musicians turn and go to play some baseball. How was that change in your life? Like, I'm sure you obviously had some sort of baseball experience. You didn't just make that transition, but to say, hey, 10 Foot Pole was at this level, they were just about to really, really pop off, and you said, you know what? I'm going to head and play for the Dodgers. What kind of transition was that for you?
Well, I had been playing baseball for almost 10 years at the point of 10 Foot Pole's somewhat success.
Okay.
So it wasn't new in that aspect. After high school, I was fortunate to be drafted by the White Sox. And it was like, hey, I got a full-time job now. I'm going to be a baseball player. And that's going to require, I think at the time it was like 6-7 months of the year. Well, that was okay, because, those guys were going to school. One of the other guys had like a carpet cleaning business. Everybody kind of had their own thing. And we were never a full-time band anyway. We were always like, the kind of band that like played when we could. Mm-hmm. And we always continued to make it happen. And so when we did record Rev, there was a little bit of success due to the fact that we were kind of riding the coattails of the Pennywises and the Rancids and the Offspring and No Effects and the whole Epitaph thing. Mm-hmm. So I think there was, I don't want to say false hope, but there was like some sort of like, and I don't even want to say fantasy, but there was this like dream of like, wow, we're going to make it too. And well, I was the only one who had the same job at that point, where my schedule was what it was. And usually I'd have, like I said, about 4 or 5 months off during the year. And we would tour somewhere in the US, maybe Europe, maybe Canada, mm-hmm. and continue to play shows. And for the first time in our existence, I think it was difficult to turn things down. Mm. And that kind of was a direct result of their decision in asking me to leave. It really wasn't me saying, hey, I'm going to go do this, because I had already been doing it. Like I said, it was my job for, I want to say 8 years, to be accurate. And so that's kind of how that worked. And I had a job that required me to be, on a schedule for a certain time of the year. And then, ironically enough, I think 2 days later, after they told me that they were going to replace me, I started the other band, and we just kind of kept doing what I had anticipated doing all along with 10 Foot Pole, but was, in a sense, denied the opportunity.
Okay. Okay. I feel you. And hey, Pulley's worked out amazing. Like,
been great. And to be honest, I think all things happen for a reason. And
absolutely.
We had been playing together as a band for, God, I want to say probably oh boy, probably, over 12 years at this time, mostly the same members.
Mhm.
So when the news came, I was devastated, and I was kind of like hurt and bummed because I was an original member of orchestrating and getting this whole thing going and keeping it together for years. Um, but then when maybe it was part of like the bitterness of me at the time, I'm like, well, I'm starting another band. I'm not going to quit playing music.
Mhm.
And I started reaching out to my friends, and I started realizing like, man, I'm going to do this all over again. And it's actually going to be with people like that I want to be with. And not that I didn't enjoy my time with the other guys, but like anything, like any family, after a while, things kind of run their course and patience wear thin. And, certain people might not be as well, playing musically as others. Some guys can write songs, some guys can't write songs. So we had been together for so long, wasn't, when I look back and I think, well, a couple of weeks went by, it wasn't so bad.
Mhm.
But then like being able to reach out, like I said, and call my friends and almost like not hand pick, but in a sense say like, well, hey, yeah, you guys want to start a band? Yeah. And that's kind of how it happened. And I mean, God, it's been like the best last 26, 27 years. It's been awesome.
Yeah, man, it's been
Been fun.
quite the run for you, for sure, for sure. So, Scott, I do want to run you through a couple of hypotheticals. My roommate's a big baseball fan. I mean, obviously, being in Toronto, we're Blue Jays fans. I'm sorry, but
Oh, it's great.
so you played for the Dodgers and you coached for the Cleveland Indians. So, hypothetically, say both teams made it to the World Series, who are you rooting for?
Well, I grew up in LA and I've been a Dodger fan my whole life. I have a really good friend who's the first base coach for the Indians. I was a pitching coach in the minor leagues with the third base coach who was a manager in the minor leagues with the Indians. I played with the manager of the Dodgers. The third base coach for the Dodgers worked with me in Anaheim when I was with the Angels as a coach. So I'm not a fan anymore.
Yeah,
And I think the minute that I signed that contract and it became my job,
yeah.
I no longer became a fan of a team. I just became a fan of the people that were involved in the game. So I guess the question would come down to like, who's pitching that night?
Yeah.
And for me, it's kind of more of like a personal level of like, well, if Kershaw's on the mound, I'm going to be rooting for him.
Mhm.
There's not too many guys in Cleveland left that I worked with. So I don't have too many ties there other than really like some of the coaches and maybe some of the trainers and, front office staff. But and they're the only team in 35 years. It's the only job I've ever had in my life. And it's the only team that's ever fired me. So I mean, I guess other than being in 10-foot pole, it's the only really two times I've ever really been said, hey, you're no longer needed.
Yeah.
And to put it nicely. And I don't have bitterness towards really either.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the baseball question, yeah, I think it's more of an individual basis of, like I said, who's pitching, who do I have more ties to really?
I
I'm
dig
not a
that.
fan.
Well, and
Yeah,
you're just happy for whoever at that point, right?
for sure. For sure.
Okay. And so there's one more for you. So say you get a couple strikeouts and you get a save, or because I know you're a reliever, or
Mhm.
you absolutely crush a show. Which feeling is more of a euphoric feeling after? Obviously, they're both going to feel incredible, but is there one that you would say is just like over the other?
Well, I'll give you another long-winded answer.
Okay.
Um, it's very gratifying. Baseball has been a job,
Yeah.
and it's gratifying to be a part of a team and get that last out. That's like there's nothing more exhilarating, and there's a high that goes along with that. But when you're on stage with your friends and you're playing music that you created, and there's a crowd there solely there to see you and completely interested in the music you're playing, it's tough to compare that to the fan who goes to the Blue Jay game. You know what I mean? Like you go to the game and you're pulling for the team.
Yeah.
When someone comes to a gig, if you go to a gig to see a certain band, you want to go see that band. And if
Yeah.
that band walks off stage and knows that they crushed it and everybody was singing and getting into their music and totally digging it, I don't think anything compares to that.
Yeah.
There's no better feeling than going backstage, taking a big deep breath, being soaking wet in sweat, and going, that fucking rock. That was killer. You know, yeah, getting a save is great, and striking out a couple guys and coming in and high-fiving your teammates, the celebration in the locker room afterwards and everything, it's great. But man, there's something special about like coming off stage with a band that just, like, as you would say, crushed it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's no comparison.
I'm totally with you. So I used to be a hip hop artist once upon a time, and I was like a multi-sport athlete. I mean, I never played anything obviously as high level as you did, but I did play a lot of different sports. And I can totally agree that, you know, after I got off stage, feeling good about a set was a much better feeling to me than, you know, making 10 tackles and, you know, and we got the win, or getting an interception and we got the win. Like that's it. I'm totally with you. I'm totally
Yeah.
with you.
And it's not to say you don't enjoy the both equally. It's just it's a different feeling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what was I going to say? Yeah. So Scott, I like to ask this age old question about, you know, your upbringing. So what got you into music? What were your inspirations? What really made you go, you know what, I think this is what I want to do?
Well, I don't think there was ever like a turning point that this is what I want. Well, there kind of was, but I guess getting into music as a young kid was just, you know, figuring out we had a stereo in the house and learning how to turn it on. And it's like, wow, this is cool. And then you turn the dial. It's like wow, there's different stations, and you start, you know, looking around for stuff. And like I said earlier, you know, growing up in an era where I don't know if there was rock and roll stations or what. It was a lot more like folky stuff. Disco kind of got popular. I'm talking when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
And then I discovered like Queen and some Ted Nugent and Kiss. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. I definitely was more attracted to that than I was, you know, Leo Sayer or something like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I had an infatuation. I wanted to play guitar, and I learned how to play guitar a little bit, and then wanted to play drums. And then as I got into like school and started like meeting other kids, you know, on a, you know, like a junior high level, where other kids started having interest as well in music, we started, you know, you play guitar and you play bass and I play drums. Hey, come over to my house, we'll jam in my garage. And so that's kind of how that started. And it was just more of a way to practice your instrument with other people and not just be so bored. And then the more we kept doing it, the more we realized like, you know, this is kind of fun. And I somehow, somewhere around ninth grade, I got introduced to like the whole punk rock thing. You know, the LA hardcore was starting to blow up out here.
Mm-hmm.
And I somehow, one of our buddies' mom took us to a gig. And I remember walking in, and we were the youngest kids there, and it was pretty violent scene in LA. And, you know, when you're 14 or 15, and anybody that's 18 or 20 seems like they're, you know, 50.
Mm-hmm.
So we were super intimidated. And I'd never seen people with mohawks in person or spiked jackets and, you know, shit like that. And the band went on, and I looked at the other guy and I'm like, yeah, this is the music we're going to play now. Because we had been playing covers up to that point, jamming, and we just got hooked. And I think at that point, watching guys play that night, you know, a punk rock show, I kind of realized like, well, I want to play this kind of music, and we're gonna be a band that does this. And I don't know if we ever did it with the mindset that we're going to do it full time for a living, but it was like, we're going to be in a punk rock band.
Very cool. Very cool. And did you think skate had anything to do with it? Like just skateboarding and stuff like that? Because I know you do have a little bit of a background nowadays with skateboarding. Yeah. Was that like a big influence as well for you, do you think?
Not so much. I was into skating, you know, in the 70s, really. We were making bootleg ramps in our backyards and stuff. And when I got into punk rock, I think they kind of just both went hand in hand. And when punk rock kind of started spreading outside of LA and reaching out into suburbia, some of the surf communities, Oxnard, Huntington Beach, some of the areas outside of LA, it was just kind of a natural transition where like, well, a lot of those kids rode skateboards and a lot of those kids, surfed or whatever. And it just kind of started meshing with the culture. And it just seemed like it was a good fit, like, you're in this fast. I can remember seeing Dwayne Peters skate, and, it was like, well, Dwayne Peters was playing, the circle jerks or the adolescents, and it was like he was going to go skate to something aggressive and energetic, and I think Ted Nugent was kind of on the way out, and so eventually it became something that coexisted for sure, and they kind of both went hand in hand, and that was just another fit that just seemed natural.
Very cool. Very cool. So, I'm sure people have asked you this question before, but I'm curious because I'm not sure. What is the background behind the name Pulley? What made you guys decide that name? Is there any sort of specific reasoning behind it? What's that about?
Well, it looked good on a sticker.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Um, you know what? To be honest, there was no real initial thought process, but when I look back and reflect, maybe this makes sense to nobody but me, but I always felt that there was, and I think the song Cashed In, the first song we ever wrote on our first record, was directed, there were some lyrics that might have been directed toward my previous band at the time. And, what does a pulley do? What is the definition of a pulley? It's like kind of like almost like a counterbalance, like where you can like, you can balance things out, and you don't really like have to lose grip of something. And like I said, I don't know if that was a subconscious thought or what, but I know that like I probably had this like mindset of like, well, I'll show those guys. I mean, who are they to say that I can't do this and I can't do that? It's like, why all of a sudden, the change, and that's really was, the spark that interest, and started Pulley. But the meaning behind it was, that you can do all these things. You can have a job and be in a band. You can, I could be an athlete and be in a band, and it was like, that. You know what I mean? And that so I think that's kind of really what it really means.
That's really cool, man. That's really cool. I like that idea. I mean, you may have not thought of it in like a deep perspective at that point, but hell, it's deep, man. It works out. It works out.
Yeah, but it makes sense too.
Yeah, absolutely. So Scott, I like to keep these very short. Short and sweet's the way to do it. But one thing I did want you to do, if you could shout out where people can actually buy your music, not so much stream it because streaming, but where can people buy your music? And where can people buy your merch as well, so that I can get more people around here in Toronto, more people around the world wearing Pulley t-shirts?
Well, I'm going to have to open my phone up here because I'm kind of clueless, but I know there is a merch store online that we have a lot of stuff. It's called Epic Merch.
Okay.
And they ship globally. And I believe it's even distributed relatively local. So you don't have to like pay like these insane prices if you're getting something from Europe to Australia or Canada to, you know what I mean? And as far as purchasing music, that's a good question. Like, I mean, really, where do you buy music nowadays?
Yeah.
Where do you buy music nowadays? If you guys are fortunate to have a local record shop, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if they sell our stuff in there anymore.
I know a lot of labels do sell like records and stuff like that. That's why I was curious, because I'm like, wait.
Oh, well, like if, doing it online,
yeah.
I mean, I know like this record label we just did with Dusty Wax. We re-released some stuff, some couple Epitaph releases. They're out of Montreal. Mm-hmm. And, they worked with different companies, SBAM in Europe. I know that People of Punk, up in Eastern Canada and the Quebec area, and, there's Thousand Island. There's all these different, labels that sell various stuff. I'm not exactly sure what this newest EP is coming out on, or where, how it's going to be distributed, what all is going to be involved. But I think all these labels, they all kind of work together now. And there's the Canadian, the European, the Asian, the North American, it's just kind of like online. Yeah. I guess it might be the best way.
You can find it online.
Find it online.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, Scott. Thank you very much, man. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. And brother, you stay healthy, stay well. And when you come out to Toronto on tour next time, we'll see you around. All right, we'll meet up.
All right. And hey, thanks for having me. I can't wait, and I hope we can make it out there, and I hope everybody else stays safe as well.
Absolutely, brother. Take care. All right.
All right. You too. Thanks, Kennedy.
Buns, check.
Hot dogs, mustard, check.
Ketchup.
Hot stuff. Nah.
Where's the hot stuff? I didn't bring any.
Yeah.
So good with the hot stuff? Very good with the hot stuff.